Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the 888 Align podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hanna. I'm a serial entrepreneur who likes to immerse into many facets of life, focusing on growth, mindset, healing, and soul alignment. 8 represents strength, prosperity, balance, power, overcoming, stability, and to me, the yin and yang of life. Pain weaves the gratitude for the beauty in life and appreciation for our generational evolution. You're in the right place if you're looking to dive deeper into finding meaning within yourself and your life experiences, work towards transforming into and aligning with your highest version of yourself, take action steps towards building and creating the life of your dreams, as well as explore discussions on health and wellness, balance, self-care, plus areas like travel, fashion, art, culture, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and even a little spirituality. To be 888 aligned means to be aligning to your strongest and most powerful and enlightened version of yourself. To continue to evolve and always be open to growth while staying true to your core values and individuality. Let's get started with this week's alignment. Hello, everyone. Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome back to 888 Aligned. Thank you for taking the time to check out the podcast and tune in as always. Today, I wanted to talk about role models. And again, as the holidays roll around, this is a great time to talk about this topic because we may encounter different people or family dynamics that impact us, good or bad. And I really wanted to reflect on who we choose and why with you because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think one of the biggest things we tend to do is place a lot of attention, awareness, and mirroring to the people we look to as role models. And when we do this, we become blind to their certain imbalances or even areas that lack growth within the person we choose to mirror after and look up to. Not only does this cause us to hold someone up on a pedestal, we also get really let down when that picture-perfect person we are holding up so high has a low moment. We place a lot of energy and care towards what they say and do, and so we get affected very easily, good or bad. And this is a similar effect to what I spoke about in episode 4, titled Not Everyone is Going to Like You, which is where I talked about how much importance we place on people's approval and disapproval of us, and then how it affects us and our ability to live out a life to our truest selves. This goes the same way with our role models. We place importance in what they say and do, and then we tend to be easily affected and influenced. And not only does this stunt our own growth, it doesn't allow us to fully connect with our higher selves. So, who is a better role model than yourself? And you may be asking, why would I use myself as a role model if I want to grow? And with that, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so growing up, maybe you looked at or still look at your parents as role models, an aunt or uncle, a grandparent, a close family friend. Maybe it's been an older figure in your life that looked out for you and always was growing, moving up in the world, and was someone who was impressive to you and someone you wanted to be like when you got older, or just simply someone you could rely on. Maybe your role model has been a teacher in school or a religious or spiritual teacher, an athlete, a musician or artist, a famous person. Maybe it's even an influencer or content creator you follow on social media. Whoever it was or is, we tend to forget that these people are human. And with being human, we all have our flaws, our areas that need growth, our fears, and our blind spots. While it's great to have people we look toward to rely on, to guide us, to help us grow, we tend to sometimes blur the lines between looking at someone else as a loose guide versus relying on someone for full-on dependency. Look, when we need it, we need it. If we are getting help to motivate ourselves, turn our life around, mirror something we want to accomplish, as well as off of someone, lean on someone for guidance when things get tough, that is all great and important and sometimes really needed. But when we start looking to someone so much that we make decisions solely based off of how they would, when we rely on their emotional state for guidance and stability, when our emotional state gets affected from them, when we use them as tools to help ourselves feel okay, things start to get a little messy. Role models are people. People have areas of growth and personal trauma. whether that trauma be big or small, whether those areas of growth be big or small. We forget that people tend to make decisions, curate certain personality traits and moral compasses, and so on, off of their personal life experience. And going back to episode 8, The Art of Detachment and Neutrality, we also know that people develop individual egos based off of their id, and then their super egos develop based off of both. So that personal life experience creates and curates us, all of us. And until we become conscious to the subconscious habits and thoughts we have, we don't change them. And even sometimes when we become conscious to them, we don't change them, right? That's something I've referenced a lot in previous episodes. So when we have role models who act mostly subconsciously, especially, there could be habits and ways of going about things that may be off, not help us grow, enable a certain way of thinking that inhibits us, and so on. And we are usually blind to that because we place so much importance in using this person as a role model. Many times in life, we get comfortable at a stage in our life and stop growing. That's a personal choice, whether it's subconscious or conscious. I remember once I did this beauty pageant fundraiser at my university, and yes, this was very out of the ordinary for me, but it was for a good cause, and I got to do some taekwondo as my talent, beat up some guys on stage, break some wood, so that was all good and fun. But anyway, each contestant during this pageant got asked a different question on stage, and mine was, if you can change anything about yourself, what would it be and why? And I answered that there isn't any one thing I would change. I would want to continue to change many things because we are always changing in order to grow in life. So to stay the same would mean not to evolve. And here's the thing with your role models. They're not always going to keep growing and changing. And on the opposite end, they may keep growing and changing, and either way, you're going to run into a difficult spot for yourself. If they never change and you're working on your own growth, you're going to start to get disappointed, confused, and feel regression when you keep relying on that one person you have your whole life that no longer meets where you are because you've surpassed some areas of growth they've chosen to stay put in. Then this leads to being let down, hurt, frustrated, and sometimes even gaslighted in extreme cases. If they always change and grow, you may realize that your stability isn't quite there and you'll get confused with what the right answer or way of doing things is. You may look at them like, just yesterday you said this, now you're saying this. Or you've spoken about a situation this way, but now that you're going through it, you're going about it a different way. Or you've told me to go about a situation one way when I was going through it, but now that it's happening to you, you're dealing with it very differently. If they always change and grow, or if they just tend to speak one way and do something else, you may realize that your stability isn't quite there. And you'll get confused with what is the right answer or way of doing things. And to hold them in a box doesn't do you or them any good either. So, this is how I've chosen to look at it instead. First, discover who you want to be and what areas you want to grow in. What is your dream life and your dream future version of yourself? You can even do a little exercise where you grab a notebook and just start writing down a list. Maybe start with 50 things you want to see your future self have, be, or do. These do not need to be all materialistic. They can also be about internal growth. And realistically, if all you can think about is the materialism, get all of that out of the way, write it all down so that you can start diving in deeper. Like you may start out with a family, a big house, a nice car, a lot of money, financial stability. But once you get past all of that, then you can start getting into the nitty-gritty when you even observe certain people in your life you don't want to resemble, or if you've done some shadow work, certain traumas you want to make sure don't happen to you or your future family or kids. Maybe it's about being more patient and kind, more loving. Maybe a goal is building a successful business that provides generational stability. Maybe it's as small and simple as having a family dog because you never got to have one, or a full-stocked fridge because you could barely ever pay for groceries, or your family could never really afford a full-stocked fridge, and you always felt unstable. Maybe it's never having any debt or a late bill. Maybe it's about traveling and seeing the world, spending more time with your family. There's so many things, big or small, that can be relevant for you specifically, and the list can go on and on. And another fun way of doing this after you make that list, and side note, I do think writing it down first is important because pen to paper and getting your thoughts out helps you brain dump And once you know that you've written down those things that really stick out in your mind, you can kind of let them go a little bit. And when you brain dump, you actually allow for whatever was behind all of that stuff in the front of your mind to come forward, because they're no longer blocked and covered by the things that are sitting in the front of your mind. And then you could really dive in deeper. But after you make that list, go on Pinterest and make a mood board or a vision board of all the things you wrote down so you can see it visually. It will really help make things come together for you even more for yourself and make it feel more real. And it's really actually cool because if you look into the reticular activating system of your brain, visually seeing these things over and over really helps you manifest these things into your life. But we'll get into that in a future episode. When you start thinking about the person you want to be, that can be considered you referencing your future self, actually, right? So time is all an illusion. So stay with me here. At some point in your lifetime, there is going to be a future version of you operating a certain way. And with all of the versions of timelines we create for ourselves, we can see that there can be multiple future versions of ourselves. And in fact, you are a future version of yourself right now. So start thinking about how that day will come up where you'll be sitting there thinking about what you want in the future. And the you now was thinking about the version you will be at that point then. And another side note, this is why when you do go to a psychic or a tarot reading, if you're into those kind of things, you're going to be told about a future version of yourself. That is just one timeline version of yourself that perhaps that psychic or tarot reader is tapping into. And maybe you're headed toward that. But that doesn't mean anything can't come in and change that timeline, or something you do changes that timeline. And it could be as small as doing one different thing that day. And look, you're in a new timeline. These readings are usually just reading into one possibility of many. Still fun and all, but just something to remember to think about when you and if you participate in any of these things. So maybe a future version of yourself looks like this. There's one maybe that has a family on a ranch in the countryside and a whole farm, right? And maybe one has a penthouse in Manhattan going to events and running a successful business. Another one is traveling the world and exploring all the different countries and places to see and meeting new people and making new friends everywhere. Maybe there's a future version with all three of them, or different ones, or more or less. What I also want you to realize is your list is going to be different, but also maybe even similar to another person listening to this episode right now. And so if you have differences and similarities all at the same time, you wouldn't want to completely lean on that person as a role model, right? Because they also have other life experiences you don't, and vice versa. You are individual enough where you need to make a plan and cultivate guidance that is individual to you, like your own personal package. But depending on where you take your life, your decisions you make, and the actions you take, there will be different versions of your life that play out, right? It's as simple as choosing to go to college or not. Different outcomes come into play, and they both can be good or bad for each of those. Or playing a certain sport in school that we take with us after we graduate versus being in a drama club and going into acting. Different versions of ourselves cultivate from our experiences, different personalities, ways of doing things, beliefs, etc. And the same way we are influenced by our parents or lack thereof, or whether they get divorced or stay together, the habits they have created in going about life from our life experiences tend to influence us and create some sort of path. But that doesn't mean we are stuck on that path, stuck in that influence, stuck in that way of life, stuck in what has cultivated our version of ourselves now. When we do the shadow work and visualizations of neutrality to get to the place of detachment, we can break free from those influences and then have better ability to allow ourselves to connect to our higher selves and change in a way that is best for the future version of ourselves we want. That way we become conscious to the choices we make, the way we choose to go about things, the actions we choose to take, and we have full control, and we can drive toward that future version the way we want to, in the manner that we want to. So we don't want to seek one person or even two to mirror our dream life after and be role models for us. We want to seek qualities and areas of growth that we want to develop from many people and source the main drive from our future and higher self. I'll say that again. I want you to get your fuel, your motivation, your desires and pull from your future self, from your higher self. What is it that you want out of life? Because if you pull your fuel and your motivation from anyone else or anything else that is not from you, you're likely going to face massive burnout at some point, or face a lot of resistance, or maybe even more failure. It wasn't true to you, so that fuel wasn't made for you. And that is a really, really important thing I've had to learn while working on myself and figuring out what is it that I actually want, rather than what was it that I was influenced to want. Then look and find many different people and figures in life that have done and accomplished or obtained each of those things if you don't know how to get there. And then look at their ways of getting there and how. The who, what, when, where, how, and why. Who are they and who did they model themselves after? What did they do, accomplish, or build? When did they do this? Where did they go and do it? How do they think and how did they go about doing it? And why did they go and do it? Maybe all of those pieces are not relevant, and it's up to you to lay them out and discover that for what you're trying to model after. Take what is important, leave what is not. Because that way you are focusing on an area of a person's ability and skill or accomplishment rather than a person. And you're no longer holding any single one person on a pedestal, and you're not going to get hurt or confused or emotional at all, frankly, when and if things don't pan out perfectly, from fully leaning on them and the type of person they are. The same way we don't want to attach meaning to our material items in life. We don't want to attach heavy meaning to role models in a way that we generally do in society. It tends to stunt us or even hurt us. And you can love and care about a person from a neutral place where you actually can have a better relationship with them, appreciate them for who they are without looking at them as a role model, holding them at certain standards, and so on. Because a person is complex. Human beings are complex. We all have individual stories, traumas, and life experiences and egos. You focus all of your attention on one singular person, you're going to encounter a lot more confusion and hardships or even hurt feelings. So if we looked at our future selves as our role models, we can cultivate the type of person we intend for the future version of us to be. And if you think about your higher self, think of that version of you as the highest and best possible version of you. The one that makes all the right decisions, the most moral decisions with your highest good in mind as well as those around you, the one that lives the best possible version of life that is individual to you and your soul's desires, the one your soul is closest to. The highest version of you is the utmost highest frequency, has healed all wounds and traumas, feels happiness and freedom, stability and safety. The highest version of you only has love to give, is patient and tolerant and kind, but also puts you first in a way that allows you to blossom while also spreading love and high vibrations to others. The highest version of you is independent, doesn't need anyone or anything to feel good, but attracts everything good because of the complete detachment and free-flowing high frequency that exists within you. Abundance is constant and frequent. Change comes and goes for the good and the better of you, and your higher self accepts that from a neutral state. You can see the list goes on, but if you think about the highest version of yourself, it is without the wounding, trauma, or tough areas of life on earth that cause us to struggle, become low vibrational, cause blind spots, get stunted in our growth, struggle in life, and so on. And remember, there is no one person that is better than another. Comparison is a waste of time and energy. In a future episode, I'll definitely dive into the let them theory because I think it's incredibly empowering in itself and really helps with what I'm about to talk about. So I've had many people in my life, and most of the time this is unprovoked, tell me they've had it harder than me, they have overcome more than me, they are more resilient than me, they are more wise than me, more strong, more experienced, know more, have been through more, are tougher, whatever it is. And with the let them theory, now I can look at these scenarios and say, let them believe that. Let them say that. Let them think that. Let them embody that. This detaches me from this desire to defend myself and take all of this energy to prove myself and take all of their negative ego parts that they're trying to pour out on me and really just not accept it. It lets go of the ego and it doesn't allow any effect toward my ego or allows their ego to come into my space. And guess what? These were people I once looked at as either role models or held on a pedestal or just cared deeply about and wanted to build good relationships with, but too much so to the point where I was affected by what they said. All of this played into this whole concept. Well, why would I want to hear that from a role model? These conversations tended to happen when I either needed help in an area that I realized the role model didn't have growth in, or when I started to slowly surpass growth in that area compared to the growth in that area of my role model. And I've also had conversations with role models or people just that I deeply cared about and put a lot of emotional reliance and dependency on that would be so inconsistent, it would leave me angry and confused. I would try to approach life one way they would normally, and then they would suddenly change it up on me and almost gaslight me for doing it the way they normally would have. And it's not to say anyone is better than anyone else. What this is about is the fact that we place so much attention on these role models or these people we leave emotional dependency on that we easily get manipulated, whether that be good or bad, one way or another. What I'm telling you to do is to be conscious to the good or bad manipulation. Manipulation here meaning the influence these people and role models have on us, and what tends to happen as a result. Consciously choose what you want to take and what you do not want to take. Choosing what you want to receive and what you want to repel is vital to maintaining your higher frequency, your personal stability, and your consistency towards your goals of your future self and having your own selves back and making sure you are okay. If you want to learn from someone, discover what it is that you admire about them specifically, and break that down, analyze it, and model yourself after that part of them, do that, but not the whole. It's silly to model ourselves after an entire person rather than a trait, characteristic, or way of doing something. And on the flip side of all this, the same way you want to be able to be accepted for changing and growing, becoming different versions of yourself, practice what you preach towards others. Don't hold anyone in a box. Don't hold anyone in their past mistakes. Change is all relative. But when we want to change, one of the most hypocritical things we can get trapped into doing with our own evolution is judging someone who suddenly decides to change too. And maybe they were doing things that caused us in the past to be stunted or gaslighted or some other negative feeling or emotion. For me, one of the most frustrating things I've encountered with people around me has been their attempt to hold me at my past versions of myself, whether it be when I was 10, 16, 21, 25, or even hold me at a perception that they've created of me. And I have evolved from all of those versions. And maybe you've experienced this as well, where you are held to the same standard and box you were when you were younger, where someone may assume you are the same as you were at those other ages. Maybe you had, made silly decisions or thought a certain way, you were immature, whatever it was. I want you to consciously make an effort not to do that to people, while also being strong enough in your own personal conviction to not let anyone put you in a box and miss your growth from a past version of yourself to even now. Anyone can claim anything about what they perceive. Again, it is you and your perception and how you hold yourself that matters. So that's, again, the let them theory. Let people think the way they want to. If they do not want to accept the new versions of you and the constant evolution of you, let them, because if they won't change and they will not accept, there's nothing you can do, and you're going to waste a hell of a lot of energy trying to convince and show them that that is not you anymore or you have changed. And you are fully allowed to change, and the old version of you is allowed to exist at the same time as the new one does, meaning it's normal and really good to acknowledge that you were once one way and have chosen to become different. In fact, I believe it's vital for our healing, our shadow work, growth, and evolution for that acknowledgement. It makes it more conscious for us and creates an incredibly strong foundation for ourselves. We can use the lessons we learned from our past as examples and tools for our current and present selves to help ourselves and to help others. Again, come at this from a non-judgmental place and from a non-ashamed place in order to really consciously reflect and change. And don't be ashamed of these older versions of you, and don't let other people make you feel that way either. When you are making conscious efforts to change, it is so commendable. So it's important to perceive that for other people as well. Whether it be about forgiveness or just someone changing the way they go about things, when you seek conscious effort, recognize that for what it is, the same way you would want someone to recognize that for you. So to wrap it up from this episode, I want you to take away these key things. 1, you're allowed to change, and in fact should, for the betterment of yourself, the happiness of yourself, the stability and consistency of yourself. And as we grow older, in the natural progression of life, we're going to have different life stages that will benefit from our changes, growth, and evolution. 2, your role models should not be people, but rather traits, goals, characteristics, disciplines, and so on. So stop placing so much attention, focus, and blind following on people. People are just people, and we are humans. And we as humans all have duality to ourselves. 3, work on separating your reliance and dependency on others with your relationship with them. The person you should fully always be reliant on is yourself. The other important people in your life should be there to share love, exchange wisdom, to learn and grow with, to learn key components from and build relationships with. But dependency is something we want to work to wean off of and work to be standing on our own 2 feet. 4, accept the tools, knowledge, traits, and parts of someone you are modeling after that you want to mirror, and leave behind the parts that do not serve you. And lastly, 5, accept people for the changes they make to themselves the same way you want to be accepted for your changes. Don't hold anyone in a box of their past selves. And if you want the ability to evolve, allow for the same in other people. And if people do not acknowledge you're evolving, or if people are against the way that you change, let them. Let them think, feel, and be the way they want, because they will regardless. And you don't want to waste your energy. So you can detach from that and you can feel a lot more free. I hope this episode brought some value to you. I know that in the past I have struggled a lot with being let down or hurt by those around me I would place a lot of value in because of their own imbalances or lack of growth in areas that would end up being very negative and painful for me. So this practice has helped and allowed me to detach from that while also embracing having those people sometimes still in my life or sometimes not having those people in my life, depending on the scenario. And you'll figure that out for yourself and whatever works best for you, and allowing room for myself to continue to grow. All right, thanks for listening in to episode 11 and getting into that 888 alignment. Stay tuned for next week's episode. I'll chat with you guys next time. Thank you for listening into the 888 Align podcast. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. I would really appreciate that to help the growth of the podcast. If you want to check out more and join the 888 Align community, you can give the podcast a follow on all social platforms at 888 Aligned Podcast.
God.